Welcome back. Thanks for staying on tonight. Taxi operators pay 23% more for tyres. Truck and bus owners 22% more. And passenger vehicles are paying 25% more. This increase comes at a time when the government is debating ways to help South Africans weather the inflationary storm. The Tyre Importers Association of South Africa is calling for immediate reversal of duties to help consumers. For more on that, we are joined now by Charl de Villiers, the chairperson of the Tyres Importers Association of South Africa. Charl, good evening, and thank you very much for your time and joining us tonight. Firstly, and we'll get to the increases that are being touted, but why the discrepancy? Why do taxis, buses, and passengers pay different amounts of duties on these tyres?
Yeah, that's just how the numbers fall. We did some modeling based on the percentages that ITAC has announced, and based on the 38.33%, that's kind of where the numbers fall. So it depends on what your FOB levels are, what you buy at, to determine what the increase you will look at. So that's the only reason why there are slight differences.
Yeah, I mean, such as a tax that we're paying on tyres. What does it go to? I mean, we know they say the fuel levy goes to fixing roads and stuff, and putting on gantries and the likes. What does the tyre duty do?
Well, the normal duty goes to the fiscus, which we pay on a regular basis, and that's between a 25 and a 30%, depending on the tariff code. This duty is a provisional duty now, so it's not yet a tax. It's deemed to be, call it a deposit for the interim period where they finalize the inspection or the investigation. So after the 6 months, which will be up until the 8th of March 2023, we as importers will be paying the additional provisional duty, which will be held in an account, and should at the end of the investigation the government decide not to continue with the investigation, we can then reclaim that money back. If they decide no, there is dumping that has taken place, that money will flow through to the fiscus, and government can decide what to do with that as they like, as they seem fit.
So they are penalizing the consumers for what they suspect could be dumping that's happening at an industry level?
That's correct, yes. So unfortunately is that the consumer is going to end up paying for this. There's absolutely no chance that the importers can actually absorb this margin and not pass it on to the consumer. Wholesale businesses just don't make those type of margins that we're seeing the increases will come through by. So yes, the consumer unfortunately is going to have to pay for this.
Is there a degree of unnecessary and maybe even extreme offloading and dumping of international product on the market?
Tabu, we don't believe there is. We feel that there's sufficient protection, as I've mentioned earlier, 25 to a 30% duty already in place. SATMC obviously feel differently about this, but the numbers that we look at is that we're not dumping product from China. I mean, I've got a few examples where we are actually more expensive than the locally produced tyres from China. So some of the tyre sizes we can't compete with the local manufacturers. So if you were dumping, then surely that wouldn't be the case.
Yeah. In terms of market share, in terms of market size, maybe let me put it that way, how much of what we have in the country is actually produced here, and how much of it comes from what is imported?
Well, that's an interesting question, and that's some of the information that we've asked SATMC and ITAC to disclose to us. That information is not available on a regular basis, but our sources indicate that 2021 financial year, imports by non-SATMC members accounted for 55% of all tyres sold in South Africa. And if you had to break it down even further into the transport sector, your trucks on the road transporting people, goods, medicine, and so on and so forth, they're up to 75%, if not more, were imported. And if you look at the local content, they only able to supply about 22% the local demand. So they are not in a position to supply the demand for South Africa. So imports are a very necessary part of the industry.
Yeah. But at 80%, are you saying that most of them are finding themselves having to import a vast majority, 80% of the 3,000 different models of tire ranges that they sell? Why such a high number?
Probably if you look at their range, yes, you're right. So we looked at their catalogs, and if we purely had to look at, there's a 3,000 unit or 3,000 different types of tires being sold in this market, and it's not by volume, I must state that. 80% of the 3,000 units are imported, and it's not manufactured locally. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just local manufacturers have aligned themselves to international trends. They look at what the OE car manufacturers in the country requires, and those they will make locally, and then the high volume items. It's impossible and it doesn't make sense to manufacture every type of tire in a specific plant anywhere in the world. So they do rely on the other manufacturing facilities across the world to supplement their product lineup. But, in the last 3 years, for the period of investigation, the 4 local manufacturers have increased their imports by as much as 43%. So they themselves are major importers themselves, although not from China maybe, but from other more expensive markets in the world, which will end up costing the consumer more.
So it's the manufacturers themselves who are going to ITEC and they're saying, please put these duties on because we are trying to protect jobs. They are essentially saying we employ close to 6,000 direct workers and support 19,000 indirect workers. And this thing of importing product from China is destroying jobs. What do you say to that?
Well, it's kind of weird that they would claim that they support the full complement of the 19,000 jobs in the value chain. Now, I've just mentioned earlier on that 55% of all tires sold in South Africa in 2021 were non-SATMC members. And if you had to break that down further, if you take their imports into it, you're looking at about 70% of products sold is, imported. So we also, of the 19,000 jobs out there, rely on imports. They cannot get sufficient stock and supply from the local manufacturers. So it would be incorrect of them to say that they are the only ones protecting the 19,000 jobs. Our members also supply those tire dealers, and they rely on imports to actually make their businesses work. So for us, all jobs matter. And if you're going to crucify the imports, the rest of the value chain will suffer as well.
So what is this additional tariff going to do really for transport costs? I mean, will importers be able to absorb this?
No, unfortunately, we won't be able to absorb it, although we are trying to work with the industry and trying to work with the consumer and try and put through as little increases as possible. But, at the end of the day, the 38% translate into about between a 20 and a 25%, depending on the segment, in your costs. And in some cases, you don't even make that in a gross profit. So you have to pass that on, unfortunately. So we don't understand the comments from SATMC where they say prices won't go up. Prices have gone up. In the last 5 months since they've launched this application, or when it was published in the Government Gazette, collectively, the 4 local manufacturers have gone up between a 15 and 18% in their prices. Now, we believe that's in anticipation of this duty coming in. So they've already placed the burden on the consumer. And the next thing to follow is that imports will have to go up in prices, and I'm sure that they're not going to sit on their hands and not increase the prices.
So what is the way forward here then, Charl? I mean, large corporations are not willing to take this one lying down. Importers are not willing to take this lying down. Manufacturers are saying we want to protect jobs. Government is saying we'll put this tax provisionally up and we'll ring fence this until it's proven that there's no dumping. What's the way forward?
Well, we're currently evaluating all the options available to us. We have 14 days to comment on the preliminary report, which came out last week Thursday. So we'll be meeting as an association and industry, as importers, to find out what is the next step. So, we've already launched the legal application to try and get more information, and we're not ruling out any other legal actions, but time will tell. We're not sure what we'll do from now.
Sure. Grim. Charl de Villiers, much appreciated, and thank you very much for coming on. Looks like quite a lot of tax that people would have to pay there, and certainly would have great impact on their transport costs. But